Hi friends, Susan Clayton with this daily devotional for Monday. I want to read a poem to you that has been a really meaningful poem to me during this period of time, and it was written by a woman named Lynn Ungar, U-N-G-A-R, and published on March the 11th of this year. It is a poem called Pandemic. She writes, "What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, as long as we all shall live." I have loved those beautiful words during these weeks of sheltering in place during the pandemic, because it has this poem has reminded me time and time again when I become frustrated or feel isolated or feel a sense of grief overwhelming me for the ways in which I am unable to do the work I'm accustomed to doing in a very hands-on way through community ministries in the world. It has reminded me to try to see the Sabbath in this, to try to grab hold of the ways in which during this time I can center down and I can, in ways that I am not accustomed to doing because of all my usual busyness, I can be in better communication with God. I can be in better communication with myself, and I can be in better communication with people I love, perhaps because I am aware more acutely than in normal times of how deeply valuable my connections to other human beings are and how deeply I miss them physically in these days. And yet, because I miss them physically in these days and I am apart from people that I value and love so much, I also understand the beauty of those relationships in deeper ways. I'm grateful for that awareness because in the usual busyness of my days, your days, all of our days, I don't think we take the time to really consider and experience Sabbath. And I mean that by Sabbath by speaking of rest and refreshment and recentering, but also Sabbath in the sense of time spent intentionally with God, time spent intentionally in conversation with God, both speaking to God in our prayers, but also listening for what it is that God is saying to us in these moments, what God is calling us to be and to do in these moments, listening to our own hearts and our own minds and our own spirits, listening to the needs of others. I have also loved this poem because it speaks so beautifully about sending out the tendrils of compassion invisibly and silently to places that we cannot touch. And I know that so many of you are reaching out with tendrils of compassion in some beautiful ways, silently and invisibly, in ways that you cannot currently touch. And that includes sending contributions to the IPC Social Service Fund so that we can continue to serve the most vulnerable in our community through food and financial assistance. It means some of you are at your sewing machines, working your little fingers to the bone, making masks that you send to a project that is giving them to hospitals and clinics and public places, as well as just to the general public. Shelters, other places that are in need of those masks to protect them. I know how many of you are preparing lunches that you are taking to First Light to serve the homeless women and children there, as well as the staff who are on the front lines and essential workers and must be there every day. I know how many of you are lifting up the world in your prayers every day and laying those prayers at the feet of God, trusting that God hears them and takes them up and is active already and far out in front of us already doing what is most needed in the world. I know how many of you are making phone calls to church members and friends and neighbors who are in special need of care during this time. So you are sending out tendrils of compassion silently and invisibly to places that you cannot touch. So I invite myself, I invite you, all of us in these days, to try to think of the ways that this time, as frustrating and isolating and lonely and grievous and chaotic as it can be, depending on our home situation, it can also be a time of Sabbath, of centering down, of being in touch with ourselves in new ways and with one another in new ways, and being in touch with God in much more intentional ways, and of seeking ways that we can share our compassion and love and prayers with a world that is desperately in need of them. I hope that all of us will find ways that we can do that in this coming week. And I give thanks for each one of you and for the relationships that we have with each other, and for the ways in which you are out there in your own homes or wherever you are, sharing the love of God and of Christ with a world that desperately needs it. Grace and peace to you, my friends.